Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Nerdcast Field of 64. I'm here with Kendall Rogers and Aaron Fitt. I'm Mark Etheridge, and let's get after it, guys. I mean, we're getting down to the last month of the season. It's May's almost here. By the time people see this, I guess it will be May. So, um, the, that's always the most fun part of the year for me. I mean, we love the regionals, we love the postseason, but the pennant race when you're getting down to the end of the season to me it's why we do this.
Yeah.
So let's start with the top eight, guys. Last week we had Texas A&M, we had Arkansas. Do you see any kind of changes there?
Negative.
Nope.
Okay, and I have the sheet shared, Kendall. If you want to pop that up there.
Yep. There we go. That way you guys at home can follow along with us.
Yep.
If you're watching on YouTube, which is I mean, if you're not driving, I recommend watching
Right.
on YouTube. Why not?
Yeah, it's we're trying to do this to make it a little more a little easier to follow so you can have a visual as we go. After this, after those two teams, what are we thinking next? The candidates are Clemson, Tennessee.
Yeah.
That's probably it for me. Right next.
Yeah, I think I still like Clemson, who was 3 in our projection last week.
Yeah.
Just as the top team in the ACC pecking order. I mean, they're close with Tennessee, but I think actually Clemson still has the slightly better resume. 11-4 Q1 versus 8-6.
Yeah. And 19 wins versus the Q1 and Q2 versus 15 for Tennessee. It's a little bit better. And also, let's not forget the non-conference season schedule. Clemson 18, Tennessee 146.
Indeed.
And we are good with Tennessee at 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So then the next group of teams, I mean, it's North Carolina, it's Florida State, it is Kentucky, East Carolina. I would think would be the next 4 in some order. Where are you guys landing there?
So last week we had Kentucky, but that was before they lost the series to the Gamecocks.
Mm-hmm.
But they are still 16-5 in the SEC, which is loud, and they're still 3 in the RPI. So they're still very much in the mix there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would lean, for me, in terms of like an order, I would lean Kentucky, Florida State, East Carolina.
What about North Carolina? I mean, they're leading the ACC right now.
Yeah, that is a tricky one there.
It's very tricky. So looking at Florida State, looking ahead, I'm not opposed to North Carolina. I'm not opposed to North Carolina here. But looking at Florida State, so Florida State is 13-8. Without pressing back, what's North Carolina's ACC record?
17-7. 17-7. So they played more games, only one game ahead in the loss column. But North Carolina has Louisville at home and then at Duke to finish.
Yeah, Florida State has NC State, who's banged up right now, this weekend at home, at Pitt, and Georgia Tech at home. So they're probably winning all 3 of those, more than likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably
put them
at
15, 17, 19 ACC wins.
Yep. North Carolina probably, you would think, you'd probably think 3-3 is a safe conservative estimate, which would get them to 20. They're, high end wins and such. I mean, for North Carolina, it's the sweep at Wake Forest, and a sweep of Georgia Tech also, who's surging now. It's not quite high end, but it's a good sweep.
Yeah. I think I might actually like North Carolina here a little bit, because the thing about it is, like, I mean, do we think that Florida State's probably a better team? Yeah. But I mean, if you compare the two teams overall, essentially they have the same resume in conference. Like one of them, like both teams have one marquee conference series win.
And I don't know that Florida State is, clearly the better team, really. I mean, it's it depends how healthy Florida State is on the mound, I suppose.
Yeah.
Certainly North Carolina's had a couple of very key injuries in the rotation, but their bullpen's really good, and their position player group is also really good, just as good as Florida State.
Yeah, it's a tough call.
I lean North Carolina here.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. Well, I mean, on that note, I mean, ECU's 1 spot behind them. ECU's 11 non-conference strength of schedule, and ECU has a head-to-head series win over North Carolina.
But as you pointed out or maybe Joe pointed out, I suppose, on our other show today that we recorded, RPI is going to work against the Pirates.
Yeah.
And so when we have to project forward now, as
Sure.
Mark always reminds people, this is not if the field was
Mhm.
assembled today. It's we're still, what do we think is going to happen over the next
Yeah.
month?
Good call. I'm good with that then.
East Carolina has to win out against the remaining schedule just to finish in the top 8 in the RPI, which means, assuming they lose a couple of games, you're probably looking at a
Low teens.
Yeah, and the teens heading into the conference tournament, which isn't going to help them in the RPI either. So
I would go Kentucky, North Carolina, Florida State. I mean, the thing about Kentucky is they have 8 more quad 1 wins in North Carolina.
So let's talk about Kentucky. So I'm with you as of today.
Yep.
Okay. The concern is the next 3 weeks. They can conceivably lose their last 5 SEC series and still have a top 8 resume, right, over the course of the year. But are you going to get the benefit of the doubt if you drop all 5 of those? Because they've dropped 2 in a row, right? Tennessee, South Carolina. They've got what they finished with Vandy. They've got Arkansas this weekend, and they go to Florida, who needs wins. I mean, they could conceivably lose all 3 of those.
They could.
I don't think they
I
will.
actually picked them to win the Arkansas series. I actually think they match up really well with Arkansas.
Yeah.
Because Arkansas doesn't score a lot of runs.
Yeah, they score enough. They're fine. Everyone's always poo-pooing the Arkansas offense. They're fine.
Okay.
And they're definitely clutch. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
So it's so that would be my only hesitation. Otherwise, I agree. Kentucky is the pick if you look at today. I'm just
I mean,
it's all hard. It's way harder
the thing is,
than the other teams we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, the difficult thing about Kentucky is I could see them losing all 3 of those, and I actually think there's a pathway for them to win all 3.
Sure.
It's not like Florida's a sure bet to be good.
Sure. Well, I mean, they're a really good team, or we wouldn't be talking about them here at 5 or 6, right? Yeah. So it's just you're playing the odds.
For this exercise.
Yeah.
Let's assume they lose the Arkansas series. I think they take care of Vandy at home. I think they match up really well with Vandy. And then, so it basically comes down to what do we think they'll do against Florida
on the road, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, maybe the safe bet here is to go maybe North Carolina, Kentucky, Florida State, or North Carolina, Florida State, Kentucky, East Carolina in that order, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I still keep coming back to the fact that Kentucky is, they're in such an advantageous spot at 16-5 in the league with the 14-4 record against Q1. And I think they've earned some benefit of the doubt. I don't think they lose all 3 of those series down the stretch. I think they could very easily win at least 2. So I think I go Kentucky, then North Carolina.
Kentucky, then North Carolina. So Kentucky 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the Q1 record is just so loud, especially compared to contenders.
UNC's 8-6 versus Q1.
Yeah. So then it's
Florida State's
East Carolina versus East Carolina.
Florida State's 8-7.
Oh. Okay.
I would still have Florida State ahead of East Carolina again because I just think ECU is going to be. We've seen the committee every year, do this where they just kind of go straight RPI with this stuff, and it's like if you're outside the top 10, even if you dominate your league and you have a lot of good stuff, non-conference, they have a great resume. It's just their league is not very good, and so if their RPI is outside the top 10, they might get snubbed again. That's it. I think they deserve it. If they do it, we think they're going to do down the stretch. But yeah, 8 feels like the right spot for the Pirates right now.
Okay. So that would be our top 8. Texas A&M, Arkansas, Clemson, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, Florida State, and East Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the next team is Oregon State.
Yeah, I think so. 12-8 in the league. Which is what, a game and a half out of first? Is that right? Where are they?
A game and a half. Yes, you're correct.
We like their team. 12 in the RPI. Yeah, I think I'm good with that, Mark.
Okay. So then I had kind of a group of teams: South Carolina, Indiana State, Virginia, Oklahoma State. And maybe if you believe in Duke, you could throw them in there too. And I know, Aaron, you do. So,
yeah.
So that would be my next group. Anyone else you want to consider for the 10 spot?
For the 10 spot, probably not.
Okay.
I think the way South Carolina is trending with their remaining schedule is pretty encouraging. They're 11-10 now in the league, above 500. 12-12 against Q1. It's a lot of Q1 games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a favorable remaining schedule. Number 4, strength of schedule also.
Yeah, that's who I had here. And then Indiana State was my next team.
Yeah, good with that. Indiana State 10th in the RPI, 14-4 in the league.
Yeah, I mentioned this on a podcast on the D1 pod earlier today, but 16 straight conference series wins for Mitch Hannes and company.
That's impressive. So then it's a little murkier for me. There's a host of ACC teams.
Yeah.
Virginia, Duke, NC State. I mean, Wake kind of took it on the chin, but, they were certainly in this discussion last week.
Yeah.
And then there's, what do you do in the Big 12? I think it's Oklahoma State or Oklahoma. Who do you have the most confidence in there? Dallas Baptist could get in here, one of these top 16. Mississippi State could get in here, one of these top 16.
That's you see Santa Barbara.
Yeah, absolutely. Or Irvine, right? Santa Barbara has the better RPI, which, I assume the committee will care about. But Irvine won the head-to-head.
Yep.
And they have the same conference record.
Right. Santa Barbara 17th, Irvine 26th in the RPI, for what that's worth.
Yeah.
Which is something.
So those are kind of the teams I see in this next group. So how do we break those ties?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? So it feels like Virginia is almost like the ACC's version of South Carolina, just kind of lying in the weeds there quietly, in a good position. They're 14-10 in the league now. They have 2 series left in the ACC, and they're both at home, NC State and Virginia Tech. So those are, chance to get 2 more quality series wins.
Mm-hmm.
You'd like their chances at home, I would think, in both of those. But I mean, if they take 2 out of 3 both those weekends, that gets them to 18-12 in the ACC. RPI will be there. Kind of like their chances.
Kendall?
Yep, I would agree with that.
Okay. So let's grab these other teams that we're talking about here. We have Duke, NC State, and Wake.
And we did not have Virginia as a host last week, by the way. So that's a team that, they've kind of benefited by. Yeah. It's changed in part because Duke lost a series at home to Florida State, which, Duke had a head-to-head against UVA. They still have the same conference record at 14-10. Duke's, 4 spots behind in the RPI now. And so Duke's remaining schedule is at Georgia Tech and versus UNC. Slight advantage for UVA with schedule. So, I mean, I still think those teams are neck and neck, Duke and UVA.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you like Duke here?
Potentially, yeah, certain. I mean, Wake Forest would be the other one to talk about if we're talking about those ACCs. Right now, I probably would move NC State out of this mix.
Okay. But
let's talk about Wake. We had them as a top 8 last week, and then they lost the series to Notre Dame on the road. 1-3 week, 2 also a midweek loss to Elon in there didn't help. So they've fallen. What are they, 16 in the RPI now?
Yeah, they have Western Carolina, Clemson at home, and then NC State to finish out the season.
Not a easy remaining 2 weekends of ACC play, and Western Carolina won't kill them in the RPI. They're actually 99th in the RPI.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, they're 12-12 in the league. They're 2 games behind Duke and Virginia at this point. Duke has the head-to-head over Wake in Winston, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I do lean Duke over Wake right now. Losing that series at Notre Dame was a big setback for Wake Forest.
No doubt.
Yeah, and Duke has the head-to-head in Winston-Salem.
Right.
So, Kendall, Big 12, you thinking Oak State?
Yeah, let's look at that. So in the Big 12 right now, Oklahoma's ahead of OSU and West Virginia by 1 game. Oklahoma has at Texas Tech, Baylor at home, and then at Cincinnati. At Cincinnati's no cakewalk right now. Like, they're playing really well. Oklahoma State at Texas, and then Texas Tech at home, and then at Houston.
Oklahoma State's also 3-1 against OU this year.
Yeah. I would probably lean Oklahoma State, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if it's here, but I do agree that would be the pecking order.
Oklahoma State, by the way, a losing record against Q1 and Q2. They're 11-12. Oklahoma 13-12. Yeah, 13-12.
Yeah, it's kind of a push there.
Yeah,
only
exactly.
separated by 2 spots in the RPI too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they look really comparable to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
And the fact, to me, like, well, it's like you always say, like, if you've got a lot of these things that look similar, like, what breaks the tie? 3 out of 4 would easily break the tie.
Yeah,
I like that.
Okay. So do you like them at 14, or is there one of these other teams?
I think maybe I do like them at 14. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
So I think at this point we're projecting to be the Big 12 champ.
Okay. So you got 2 spots left: Wake Forest, Mississippi State, Irvine, Santa Barbara, and Oklahoma.
So Kendall has made a compelling case for Mississippi State's chances here recently.
Yeah.
I mean, let's dive into that. So they're 12-9 in the SEC. They have Alabama at home, which won't be easy. Alabama's really good. They have Alabama at home, Missouri at home, and at Arkansas. Yeah. So if they're at 12, they win 2 of those 3 series.
Call it 6-3.
They beat 16 wins. And let's say they take 1 at Arkansas. They go into Hoover with 17.
And RPI will probably be low 20s.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the needs report on that real quick here.
Well, and they have Ole Miss in a midweek game this week, which counts to the committee as a conference game.
Yeah,
27 RPI.
Yeah, so to get into the top 16, they'd have to win out. So they're likely not going to get in the top 16 heading into Hoover. Now they could get another boost in Hoover, but you're probably, Mark, I think you nailed it. They'll probably finish somewhere around 20 if they finish well.
Mark, what does history say about SEC hosts and the number of conference wins that they have typically? If you have that offhand.
Look at that SEC hosts tab. God, this guy's organized.
So if you want to sort by, let's filter here.
Either way for Mississippi State, while I was looking that up, either way for Mississippi State, no matter what they do the rest of the way, if they win all 3 series, they're probably a host. But let's say they win 2 out of 3, Hoover's could very well mean a lot.
And I'm also interested very much in looking at the RPI for these SEC hosts. I mean, how many?
26.
What kind of precedent is there for a team that goes, let's say, 17-12 with a 20 RPI in the SEC? Like, does that team usually host?
Not used to using these Google Sheets.
We're watching Mark attempt to work his spreadsheet magic here on YouTube.
Yeah, it's riveting. So yeah, I mean, you've had some, like 2022. No, they were a 2 seed. My bad. Let's do that. Let's do a filter here too. Well, we can probably just tell. So here's one at 22, Ole Miss, 2019. It's 16-14.
Wow.
But they went on a tournament run. They won 4 games.
There you go.
Made it to the finals. Let's see what else we got here. That's pretty much it. Here's on 19. That was Auburn last year. They had 17 wins.
And they did not go on a tournament run either, 1 and 2. But they also, I don't know if you guys heard, but they might have had a voice in the room.
Yeah. So it's not often that it happens, Kendall, but it does happen. But they would need to do something like Ole Miss did to go on a tournament run, which they're certainly capable of.
They are. I don't know if I love their chances right now compared to.
I kind of feel like I kind of feel like they might be another week away. Let's see what their RPI looks like, because a lot of things can change, right? Like, just because the needs report says that today doesn't mean all their opponents that they played this year don't have a great weekend and they go up even more.
Right. It's just a rough guideline.
And you also brought up kind of an interesting thing, is they do play Ole Miss tonight. So in the committee's eyes, that's another conference win, right? Even though it's not officially, but it is a win against an SEC team. So
so technically they have,
I don't know how that matters, because I don't count that, in what you just saw.
Yeah, that's a great point. Have they played this year?
Or
like on a Tuesday?
Nope.
I don't think they have. They haven't. I thought they played twice a year on a Tuesday, like Oregon State.
So given the RPI challenge facing Mississippi State here, I think I would lean one of those Big West teams for one.
I would too. I think one of those Big West teams will host in this range. Like, I don't think you're going to have Irvine at 26 and UCSB at 17 and neither hosts. Because honestly, what those teams have done RPI wise, considering how bad the West has been this year, is actually pretty impressive.
Yep. Yeah, and I see, Mark, you moved Santa Barbara into that slot. I think that's probably the play.
That's right.
Strictly
It's
by
an RPI. It's an RPI pick, and I mean, if you go and look what they did at a conference, go look at the non-conference season schedule. It's not incredible for UCSB, 95, but UC Irvine at 172. I like the fact that UCSB, the thing the committee, always mentions, and it's why Kansas State went to Northeastern when Aaron saw them, is, UCSB went to Campbell. They literally went across the entire country to play somebody. They played UConn. They went to Oregon. So they made an attempt to go out there and actually play really good teams.
Yeah. Now, it's worth noting that both these teams are likely still to kind of slip in the RPI. If you just, again, using the needs report as a gauge to kind of predict which way teams will trend in the RPI. Both teams need to win like 11 of their last 15 just to stay in the top 32, which tells me, they're likely both going to slip. I mean, Santa Barbara they can win out and finish in the top 16 is what the indication is here. But let's say they both win 11 of their last 15 and they finish at 30. That gets a little interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's not a slam dunk either, because we're looking at Santa Barbara at 17 right now. They're not going to stay at 17. I mean, they're probably going to be best case scenario in the mid 20s.
Yeah, but Big West teams do host when they're in the.
That's true.
They're out of the top 16.
That's true. They get that leeway, and they should get that leeway.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I am okay with them there.
So we still got a spot left, and the teams that we have are Wake, Mississippi State, Irvine, and Oklahoma. Is there anyone else you want to consider? We had Arizona last week. They had a setback, but they could still be considered here.
Yeah, they're down to 33 in the RPI now.
Yeah, that's too low.
Yeah, I mean, they need to certainly climb back up. But
West Virginia,
I don't think so.
They're at 34.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Nebraska, I guess we could talk about again. I don't think so. In the Big Ten, don't see that happening.
I'll say this:
Vanderbilt, Georgia.
I
mean, Georgia's 9 in the RPI. We should probably talk about Georgia.
Okay.
The other team I would say too, real quick, they're not a host this week, but be curious, Aaron, what the needs report says on USD. San Diego sitting at 20 and 29 in the RPI, 30 and 12 overall. 19th strength of schedule in non-conference in the country. But those are pretty solid marks for a WCC team.
Yeah, that's interesting. They only have 8 games left. They do. There is a conference tournament in that league, unlike the Big West. But needs report says you need to win 6 or 7 of their last 8 to finish in the top 32.
Oh, wow.
So no path to the top 16.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, Georgia's one to look at, mainly their remaining schedule, because they're pretty, their offense is really impressive.
So they got Vandy at home this weekend.
Yep.
They'll win that.
Yeah, you seem to be pretty convinced that that's a bad matchup for Vandy, so that'll be interesting. At South Carolina and then versus Florida. Yeah, I mean, it feels like probably favored to win 2 out of those last 3, which would get there's like currently 10 and 11 in the league, so it probably only gets them to about 15 and 15. Feels
Right.
a little short.
So it would be really interesting because you'd have Mississippi State, who would have a really
2-game edge.
have a 2-game edge and a head-to-head, but a worse RPI, versus Georgia with a better RPI, but you
Yeah.
flip it, right?
So I would lean Mississippi State in that scenario.
You would hope,
Yeah.
right? But
Common sense.
We've seen the committee.
Mississippi State.
We've seen the committee though with its level fear with that RPI. I mean, how often is it? Especially recently, it's been like almost straight RPI on the host, like every year, which is frustrating. If you're interested in the Diamond Sports DSR rankings here, by the way, Georgia's 12th in the DSR, so a few spots lower than they are in the RPI, and Mississippi State is 18th in DSR. So again, as we said before, I think that's a better indication of where Mississippi State stands than RPI, but the committee doesn't use DSR, but just continuing to keep that in people's minds here.
Right. I mean, I keep coming back to Mississippi State here. I mean, it's for me, it's either they or Oklahoma. Those are my next 2.
I think Wake also is still very much in the mix. The problem for Wake is, again, losing that series this past weekend. They're 12 and 12 now.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they have Clemson at home and they're at NC State. So like
their best case scenario, I think, is being 1 game over 500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen for them.
Yeah. If they win both the series, 2 out of 3, let's say,
they're in.
Then they're 16 and 14 in the ACC, with some nice series wins.
Mm-hmm.
They could win. I mean, I probably would pick them to win the Clemson series at home just because it is at home and they're tough at home and they're both good teams, both talented. Yeah. Clemson's obviously really good, but like they're not like some juggernaut that can't be beaten. And then, at State, probably coin toss, with a slight edge to the home team. So maybe a 3-3 projection for 15 and 15 overall. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a path, clearly. But yeah, you're right. I mean, maybe Mississippi State's path is easier. It's just I keep going back to that RPI thing, as we've talked about, and the committee's level fear with it.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about all these teams. I mean, one more team we need to probably bring up in this discussion is Dallas Baptist. They're all the way back up to 13 in the RPI, 6-1 versus Q1. They're now just a game and a half out of first place. I think if DBU has a top 15 RPI and they end up winning that league, I think they're going to end up hosting.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good call. I mean,
so they're going to drop though. Looking at the RPI again, I mean Needs report says they need to win 9 out of their last 11 just to stay in the top 32.
Ooh.
So they're likely to fall into the 20s.
Interesting. Yeah, and I don't think the resume is going to be strong enough to withstand being like 23 or something.
No, I mean there's 2 teams.
They need to be in the top 16 to host.
Yeah, and there's still 2 teams ahead of them in the standings too. Like you're not going to host if you don't, I think, win that league either. Which they might.
Without question. That's what I was saying. Like if they win the league,
right?
I mean, for me, it's Wake Forest or Mississippi State.
Yeah,
between those 2, I would go Mississippi State because I think they're going to win. They're going to have 17 conference wins.
Or you could split the difference and go Oklahoma. I guess split the baby.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Oklahoma with an 18 RPI currently, and they are still leading the Big 12. Maybe that's the easiest answer. Yeah. We're just looking too hard here. I think I do like Oklahoma. I mean, Big 12 can get 2. They're probably going to get 7 teams into regionals. Why can't they get 2 hosts?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good with that. I've got my eye on the Dogs, though. They have a big weekend. I'll be very, very curious if they win tonight and have a big weekend where their RPI is on Monday.
That is an interesting series for sure. So, okay. All right. So we got our top 16, A&M, Arkansas, Clemson, Tennessee, Kentucky. That might be the exact same order as last week. North Carolina, Florida State, East Carolina. The only change in our top 8, Florida State replaces Wake Forest. And then for the hosts, you've got Oregon State, South Carolina, Indiana State, Virginia, Duke, Oklahoma State, UCSB, and Oklahoma. So Virginia is in as a host. UCSB is in as a host. These are changes from last week. Oklahoma State is a change, right?
Yes.
And they replace Coastal, Arizona,
Wake.
and Wake. Okay.
Okay, guys.
Part 2.
So let's go conference by conference. We'll pick the automatics and we'll talk about the at-large teams.
Here we go. Alphabetical order, starting with the America East, also known as the Bryan Athletic Conference. Your Bulldogs are 13-2, and will remain the pick with a 5-game lead over the Riverhawks and the Retrievers. To the American, it's the Pirates, and it's a 1-bid league. To the A10, where are we in the A10? So we've got last week we had St. Louis. They're currently a half game behind Dayton in the standings. They did win 2 out of 3 at GW. I don't see any reason to remove the Billies right now.
Okay.
VCU, by the way, 81 in the RPI is the best RPI team in that league. Obviously, they're not going to get in that large, but, just worth a quick mention. ASUN, I'm sorry, I did skip the ACC, yes. So we've got Clemson, Florida State, NC State, Wake Forest, North Carolina, Virginia, Duke, all easy ones. I still think Virginia Tech is for now still somewhat safely in 13-11 in the league with a 37 RPI. They're obviously slipping. They've lost 4 straight series now. Wake at Georgia Tech, Duke at North Carolina. So not so super safe, but given the likely state of the bubble, I think they're probably right now still okay. They've got Miami at home. You would think that's a big opportunity to get right. That's in 2 weeks. First they play Ohio, which will hurt the RPI. Ohio's 244 in the RPI, and it's a home series. And then you can pray for rain in Blacksburg. That's a thing that people do. And you got at Virginia to close, which is a good RPI booster. So keep an eye on the Hokies. They're probably okay to finish in the top 45 with winning about 8 or 9 of their last 12, according to the news report.
Gotcha. Georgia Tech would still be on the bubble. They won 2 out of 3 from Miami, but the RPI is where it is. So,
and to be more specific, that RPI is 53, which is actually down 4 spots from last week. So keep an eye on that. But they're playing well and they're trending. Certainly like their direction. They're at Clemson this weekend, though. Huge weekend. But I mean, they just avoid a sweep. I think they're helping themselves because they're going to get a big RPI boost there.
Right.
And I think that's it for the ACC, right? I mean,
I don't think, Louisville has an RPI problem.
Yeah.
Boston College and Notre Dame have better RPIs, but they have a conference record problem.
Yep.
So I think
that's it.
Unless something changes there, that's it.
Yeah, really interesting about Louisville, by the way. 10-11 in the conference, 25-18 overall, 77 RPI. The DSR, by the way, has Louisville at 39, which is
how about
quite
that?
A difference.
That's huge. A big difference.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay. But so for now, Louisville just has a lot of work to do. The remaining series are at BC, at North Carolina versus Notre Dame. So, project let's say 6-3. I'm sorry, a 5-4. Call it a 5-4 finish. That would get them to 15-15. Probably not going to get there with the RPI at that rate.
Yeah, the RPI is the problem. Yeah. Okay. To the ASUN.
So we had
deal with Kennesaw.
It's gotten more complicated there, hasn't it?
I know. There's a host of teams there at the top.
Kennesaw had a 2-2 week, lost the finale at Bellarmine, which certainly hurt their at-large chances. Bellarmine 7-36, guys, 291 in the RPI. Got to sweep that series if you have to play them, which you do. They are now down to 79 in the RPI, which last week they were at. I mean, that's a 21 spot drop So like they were right kind of in that large mix, but now they're not anymore, really. But I still think they're the, like, I want to say I still think they're the best team just because of we've seen the high end of what they can do, with that Kentucky series win and the win against Clemson. I know that we keep mentioning those things. Those are early season data points, but I mean, they're in a 3-way tie for second at 14-7 with Stetson and Austin Peay. Austin Peay's come on.
Yeah, that would be a team I would look at here too.
Yeah, six straight.
Yeah, I mean they have what, 3 SEC wins this year? They have as many as Auburn.
Yeah, that's my gosh.
It's
and one of those wins is at Auburn. Right. They lost that series, but they won Auburn one of those games at Auburn and also beat Mississippi State twice on the road. So yeah, I mean, I could be persuaded to make that change. I actually really like the way Austin Peay is playing, and I like their team. We've talked about it before. They have talent. Lyle Miller Green is insane. The run he's on. We've got a feature coming on him next week. But Walt Villa on the case, the great Walt Villa, America's greatest feature writer. So yeah, let's do that. Let's go Austin Peay, make that change.
Okay.
So automatic, I'll track those in here.
Okay.
If you want to move on to the Big 12.
Big 12. Well, obviously we've got a couple of hosts here. Oklahoma State will project.
Yep.
Oklahoma.
West Virginia would be in.
West Virginia.
Texas was a team that, we had on the bubble last week. The Longhorns go on the road, take a series from Oklahoma. Their RPI went from like 76 to 58, and they're just 2 games out of first place. I actually would probably at this point take them off the bubble.
Yeah.
For the time being.
58 RPI though is still bubble. Like regardless.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting in at 13-8 in the league though.
I mean,
yeah,
I'm Kansas. Yeah. Here. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I would just, you continue to make the comparison to Kansas State last year, who finished 13-11 in the league, winning record, right? If I recall, and had an RPI in that kind of 50s range, or maybe in the 60s. I can't remember. It was in this kind of general range, though.
I think.
Yeah.
Texas has. So what do we say? Oklahoma State at UCF and versus Kansas.
Yeah. I mean, again, kind of like we were talking about Kentucky earlier. Like I could see them winning all 3 of those, and I could see them losing all 3 of those.
Yeah, just a high volatility team and a high volatility conference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So who knows? But right now, I mean, you're right. Like right now, they're in pretty good shape. But we'll kind of see like how this plays out in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, Texas Tech would still be in.
Yep.
And then you've got a group
Texas Tech is. At least Texas Tech is they're 18 spots higher in the RPI. They're number 40, and 12-12. At least they're not below 5. They're not buried in the standings. Volatile. Go ahead, Mark.
So then you've got a group of teams. I mean, you got Kansas State, TCU, Kansas, who's certainly trending upward. UCF, even Cincinnati, is at least within striking distance. So you've got there's a lot of contenders in the Big 12 this year, and it's kind of one of those leagues where the bottom is good enough to beat the teams at the top, and it's just kind of pushing everybody together.
Yeah, Kendall, you made a case for Cincinnati's path in your Rogers Rewind this week, I believe. You want to lay that out for people?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Cincinnati, I mean, they're a game above 500 in conference. I still think they have work to do. I mean, they're 69 in the RPI, so they have work to do. But I mean, right now they're ahead of Texas Tech and Kansas State in the conference standings. So looking at the Bearcats kind of the rest of the way, I mean, honestly, pretty advantageous. They get West Virginia at home. They get Oklahoma at home. They're at BYU, and they also go to Indiana. That's not going to hurt them. And they have Connecticut in a midweek game at home. So, I mean, I would not have them in right now probably. But, I mean, the pathway is 100% there.
Yeah.
Like, I actually kind of feel like they control their own destiny a little bit if they win those 2 conference series and take care of business against UConn and Indiana.
Needs report for Cincinnati says need to win 10 of their last 12 in the regular season to get into the top 45. Now, they don't necessarily have to get in the top 45 if they have a good conference record, but it's
there's work to do. They're very Kansas State of last year-esque.
Yeah, they're going to need to really play well down the stretch. That's the bottom line.
Then UCF is a tricky one for me because they're 9-12 in the league, but they're 32 in the RPI. I mean that's a tough one for me to handicap when they're 9th place in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
They get that.
Same with TCU at 10-14 and 38.
UCF gets that Sunshine State bump, just like we see teams in North Carolina and South Carolina get that midweek RPI game bump, right? Like, when you're in Florida and you're UCF and you get to play at Miami and at FAU and at Florida, at FAU again. I mean, they won all those games. One at Jacksonville, who leads its conference right now. So they've done a good job in their midweek, which really kind of props up their case, but they are not really getting it done on weekends. And boy, that series that they had to play, non-conference series, they played against Central Michigan, which they probably thought was a great series to schedule when they built their schedule. Central Michigan's been such a consistent winner. Central Michigan's 12-29 with a 259 RPI, and UCF lost one of those 3 games. So that was a big. Despite that, they're still 32 in the RPI, but that's a little bit of an eyesore in the resume.
Well, it really is the difference in this conference with the teams with better conference records and worse RPIs and vice versa.
Yeah.
And last year, the committee went with the RPI. They chose Oklahoma instead of Kansas State, and even though K-State had the head-to-head.
Yeah. And at least UCF does have a couple of series they can hang their hats on. I mean, 2 out of 3 from Kansas State was in the mix, 2 out of 3 from Texas Tech, 2 out of 3 at Kansas, 2 out of 3 against Oklahoma State. That's 4 straight weekends they had. I know that was a while ago now, but those are 4 straight quality series wins, which matters to me. So for me, they're still in pretty easily.
UCF.
Yeah. Maybe not easily just because that conference record, but they're in.
Okay.
When you mentioned the RPI importance, and then you factor that in with those quality wins.
So if you feel that way about UCF, how do you feel about TCU, who to me looks really similar?
Yeah. 10-14. So a little bit behind UCF, the standings. They're technically in 11th place, but not that far back. 38 RPI, not that far back of UCF.
Mm-hmm.
TCU has a series win against Kansas State this past week, which was good. They also have a home series win against Texas Tech, so kind of matching those 2 series for UCF.
Yeah, I think they're at least on the bubble.
Yeah.
So then you've got K-State, Kansas, and Cincinnati we need to decide what to do with. Are they all 3 on the bubble?
K-State, certainly. 31 RPI, 10-11 in the league. It's been just up and down every week. You just like yo-yo team, but I think they're still ahead of a lot of these other teams we've talked about. UCF, TCU. Kansas is the interesting one.
So they're ahead of UCF.
I think so. I mean, the RPIs are comparable. They're better in the standings.
Okay.
Slightly, 1 game.
Yeah, Kansas at 64 in the RPI, 12 or what are they in conference? 12-9 in conference. They're actually at Kansas State this weekend.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's almost an eliminations. Well, I wouldn't say elimination because I think Kansas State has more outs, but for Kansas, it feels huge because they're 64 in the RPI. Yeah.
I mean, they're very comparable to Texas. They're just to me and to a committee, 64 just looks a lot worse than 58.
Right. So remaining schedule for Kansas at K-State. Versus Houston, who's 500, and at Texas. It feels like actually a path that should help their RPI if they can play all right. They can, let's see, they've got 11 games left. They need to win about 10 of them to get into the top 45. But, if they win, let's say 7 out of their last 10 and get into the 50s, maybe low to mid 50s, and they got a shot for sure. But yeah,
Are we bubbling them, or is it?
I think so.
This week? Okay.
I think that. I mean, if we're gonna have TCU in the bubble, I think you gotta have Kansas on the bubble.
Okay.
Based on the standings.
And then Cincinnati.
I think that one's
maybe a week away.
I would hold off.
Yeah.
Although I think the chances of the Big 12 getting 9 bids is about 0 to 0.2%.
And if they're the 9th team, then I would not include them.
And there's just it's just such a league that has a lot of middle of the pack, teams with decent metrics. But anyway, it feels like a team that could only get 2 hosts, but could get a bunch of bids, or maybe they start getting picked off down the stretch. That's probably more likely.
All right. Okay. So the Big East is interesting. When's the last time we had 4 or 5 teams? There are 5 teams that can conceivably play their way in at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. So UConn obviously would remain the pick. I mean, they've won 8 in a row. Yeah. Kendall just texted me to ask if there's a cat around me. It's the dog snoring from the couch.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, I hear either a baby crying, or I was like, Fitt, did you is there something you didn't tell us?
Wheezing, snoring, sleeping dog.
Okay.
I'm like, she's getting old. Give her a break. She's 13. What do you want?
You're good, Trixie.
That's Callie.
Oh, Callie, I'm sorry.
But yeah, so UConn is still the auto bid here, of course. But yeah, as you mentioned, there's
these
Georgetown
next 4 here. Yeah.
Georgetown, St. John's, Xavier, and Creighton are all in the discussion.
Yeah. Well, we could probably take Xavier off the board just because they're 500.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And they need to make up some ground in conference too.
Really don't like Creighton's path right now because they had made that run last week. They took 2 games from Coastal, and then they went ahead and gave that momentum right back by losing 2 games at home to Georgetown. And Georgetown's good, but that resulted in a 9-spot drop in the RPI from last week. They were in the mid 40s. Now they're 55, and also they're 4-7 in the league. And that's just a kind of a non-starter. They need to, but now they can make a run there. But you got to finish in the top 3 to have a chance in the Big East to get a bid. And so then they're 4-7. So they're at St. John's, they're at UConn versus Seton Hall. It's a tough schedule. I don't love it for them, guys. I think right now I would hold off on them.
Yeah, same.
I
would have it 1 bid right now.
Yeah, I mean Georgetown.
Yeah, with St. John's, I would have St. John's and Georgetown in that order.
St. John's over Georgetown. So right now, St. John's is 6 spots ahead in the RPI. 1 game back in the standings relative to Georgetown. There is,
and St. John's still hosts. They still host Creighton and Georgetown.
Right down the stretch. So opportunity.
Yeah,
there.
I like their chances a lot actually.
Really?
Well, what's the needs report say on St. John's?
To get to the top 45, would need to win 9 of their last 12.
I mean, that's pretty doable actually.
It's possible. I don't know, but I mean, it's just, again, those aren't pushover games we're talking about with Creighton and Georgetown. Those are good teams, but yeah, I mean, they're at home. You like that? They get a chance. I mean, to at least get to around 50. We could put them on the sheet.
Yeah, I would put them on the sheet. I think they've got a good shot to make a run here.
Yeah. And as I've talked about, I just talked about in our last show, our flagship show, I do like Georgetown's team. I don't know that the math is going to work out for them, coming from 63 right now.
Yeah.
They needs report says need to win 10 of their last 11. So,
and with those 4 teams, the nuts.
Yeah.
All right. Cause you got, any of the 4 could win it, or maybe even.
Yeah. And Mark, and here's the other thing I really like about what St. John's did is, the committee last year, it was schedule intent. Well, they went to Florida. They had 2. They won, and then the last 2 games were rained out. They went to Houston. They went to Texas. They went to Sam Houston. So they literally spent the first 3 weekends playing teams that historically are always in the postseason hunt.
Yeah, I like that.
It's
too.
Impressive to me.
Yeah, and the other thing is, this is certainly a league that could wind up being 2 bids if somebody other than UConn wins the conference tournament, because right now UConn really does feel like an at-large team, even though they're 3-12 against Q1. But the fact is, they went out and played a tough schedule, and as a New England team, and got their teeth kicked in a little bit, but then rebounded, made a crazy run. I love that profile for an at-large team.
Yeah, and they've got cachet, and it's very obvious when you look at their team, what happened, right? They just had it. It took them a while after losing all the players they lost last year to get going a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they're in easily at this point. I've got them a 2 seed at the moment.
Yeah, I like that too. Okay, let's go to the Big South. Despite my fighting Blue Hose winning that series this past weekend against Upstate 2 out of 3, Upstate's still in first place. Actually, the percentage points behind High Point, I take that back. It's 13-5 versus 11-4. I think I'm comfortable sticking with Upstate as the preseason favorite. They're still right there toward the top. Presbyterian I do like, but they're just 22-22 overall. So let's not get carried away. Let's just stick with Upstate, I think.
Okay. All right. Big Ten is interesting this week.
It is.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
we got Nebraska.
I still,
yeah.
I think I still would have this 1 or 2 bid league, probably a 2 bid league. Nebraska, and then one of Illinois or Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that
Indiana. I do agree with Fitt on Indiana. It might have been in our other pod we talked about Indiana, but Indiana certainly playing better. 7-2-1 in their last 10, 3 straight wins, 1 game out of first place, 71 RPI though.
Yeah,
they've got some work to do.
But it's been trending up, that RPI. Yeah. Last week they were 78, so they have climbed. I don't think the math is going to work for them. Needs report says though they could win 8 or 9 of their last 11 and get into the top 45. So team that it feels like if they play well down the stretch could at least get into the 50s, pretty easily, and maybe even into the 40s. Like there is a path. There, and that starts by the way with a big series coming up at Purdue this weekend. Really big series in that league, and then they're at Nebraska and versus Michigan. So, I mean, I think Indiana is talented enough to win all 3 of those series. Doesn't mean they will. Doesn't mean they will. I don't even know if they're favored to, but they could.
Yeah. I will say this, one team to talk about real quick, and I think this weekend's coming elimination series for them is Maryland. Maryland's RPI is at 38. They're 28-17 overall. Looks good, right? But they're 8-10 in the conference, and they have 2 conference series remaining. They go to Rutgers this weekend, and they have Penn State at home. I think if they lose the Rutgers series on the road, I think they're going to have to make a huge run in the conference tournament. I mean,
yeah, good point. So that's a good point, though. Besides Nebraska, they're the next best RPI team in this league. It's just that standings piece hurts them, but
sure does.
There's a chance. There's a window there.
So do we feel like a Purdue or an Illinois or you mentioned Indiana? Do you feel like there's enough? Because I do think this is going to be a 2-bid league. I think someone is going to be there. I just don't know who it. Of those 3 or some, or maybe it's Maryland. Ohio State or Michigan. Somebody is going to get hot down the stretch.
Kind of like the cut of Purdue's jib. If you read Patrick Ebert's report today at the Midwest Connection on our site, breaks them down. Interesting club. 62 in the RPI, so 4 spots ahead of Illinois. They're tied for first at 11-4. They play down the stretch at Purdue the final weekend. Purdue also gets Indiana at home, as I mentioned, and they're at Michigan. So with that schedule, with the home series there, they need to finish very strong to boost that RPI. Needs report says need to win 8 of their last 10 to get into the top 45, which again, the fact that their 2 toughest series are at home gives them a chance.
So let me throw this out there, guys. I mean, somebody's going to win this league. Currently, it is the 4th rated RPI conference.
Yeah.
Whoever wins the league may not be Nebraska.
Right.
The regular season. I think whoever wins the regular season, if you're the 4th rated RPI conference, you got to get in.
I would agree. That's interesting that they're so high in the RPI. I guess they don't really have any true, the worst RPI team.
Them down.
Yeah, worst RPI team is Penn State, who's 162, and they have, some. They're not terrible either, but like that's not a terrible RPI for a lot of road games
too.
Yep, a lot of road games in this league. Great point. That always helps the Big Ten. I agree with your point, Mark. For sure, if somebody besides Nebraska wins the auto bid, and then Nebraska gets in as net large, and then you have the regular season champ, this could be a 3-bid league that way.
Yeah.
Right now, I think I lean toward putting Purdue as our second team in here. And Illinois had a setback. They had been playing well. They won 8 straight, and then they lost the last 2 games at Maryland. Nothing, no shame in that on the road, losing 2 out of 3. So it's not like a disqualifier, but.
Do you want to make Purdue the automatic? Or do you stay with Nebraska as automatic?
I think if we still believe Nebraska is the best team, then that's who we stick with.
Okay. So would Purdue be on the bubble or would they be in?
Probably bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, you could add them right now and leave Illinois as well, and just kind of come back to it later.
Okay.
Put both those teams on the bubble with Indiana and Maryland kind of on the radar.
Okay.
That makes sense.
It does. Yeah.
And when it comes down to Purdue versus Illinois, I don't know how to handicap that. Maybe you lean toward Purdue because they get to play Illinois at home at the end.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Big West. We have Santa Barbara.
No.
We have Irvine.
No change. I mean, Northridge is worth talking about, though. Won 8 in a row, guys.
Mm-hmm.
They have climbed to number 80 in the RPI. No, actually, they fell. They fell from 74 last week to 80, despite sweeping.
They're tied for the conference lead right now.
Yes, so that's also.
What does the needs report say on Northridge? Because I mean, they finish up with UCSB and UCI.
Yeah, you're right, and at UCI, and by the way, that fall this past weekend was because they played Bakersfield and they swept them, but Bakersfield's 11-30, so you sweep them and you still fall 6 spots. Needs report for Northridge says they got 13 games left, need to win 10 or 11 of them, depending on, again, the permutation of home versus road wins there, to get into the top 45. So let's say they win 8 of their last 14. That's probably, I don't know if that's enough. I think if they win 10 of their last 14 and get into the 40s,
Yeah, they'd have a great shot.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, because there's no conference tournament, right? So the automatic bid goes to the regular season champ. And right now they're tied for the lead.
Yeah,
now, I don't know how this is going to shake out, but
they're tied for the lead, but they haven't played Santa Barbara or Irvine.
Okay,
and so
that's fair.
I would imagine that they will not be
stumble,
right. I would imagine so on the radar, but I would not add them to the list today.
Okay. All right,
CAA.
Yep.
We've got Charleston now, guys. Won a big series at Campbell. They climbed to 50 in the RPI, which is a jump of 11 spots from last week. They're also 25 in DSR, Charleston, which again feels like a more accurate indication of the season they've had. They've had a really nice year. I think is it non-conference RPI or SOS that hurts them?
Yeah, it's like well in the 100.
Yeah, 198. So that's the mark against them, which could wind up really hurting.
That's a really bad in SOS for a mid-major,
especially in that part of the country.
I was going to say, especially
to play.
Yeah, that's weird. I wonder. Just glancing at their midweeks,
they played Nebraska. Problem is Marshall, Youngstown, and Penn. That's 192, 280. Youngstown's killing them. 284 and 193 for Penn.
Yeah, and it, again, like I look more at the opposing record than the RPI of those teams, because that's 50% of the formula is your opponent's record. And Youngstown's 10-33, Marshall's 13-29. Penn's record is fine at 17-21, so I would think that didn't hurt them as much as those other two teams did, even though Penn has the lower RPI.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's the RPI is the problem. They do have a series win at Wilmington also, though. So they've got those two.
I would say, like,
Charleston,
I would put all 3 of these teams on the board and put Charleston as the auto.
Yeah, which I don't know who was the auto last week. Mark, do you have that?
Northeast. No, Wilmington.
Northeastern.
Yeah, was Charleston. Charleston has the head-to-head against Wilmington.
Right on the road too. Yeah. So. And we'll have a piece on Charleston tomorrow on the site. As in fact, I guess as you're listening to this, it'll be today because it'll be posted on Wednesday, this podcast. But Patrick Ebert on the case again. Timely Pat, we call him, with the instincts here. Charleston, I do like as the automatic. Wilmington, 48 RPI, 14-4 overall. I'm sorry, in the conference, so they're tied, and they have the road series win at Northeastern. I mean, and then you got Northeastern, who's only a game back at 13-5, and is 35 in the RPI with a 5-2 record against Q1. Right now, it feels like all 3 of those teams should at least be on the list.
I agree.
Yep.
So UNCW would move to the at-large category. So make a note of our automatic changes. C of C replaces UNCW. Okay.
Conference USA.
Yep, 2-bid league. La Tech, 5 straight wins, 7-3 in the last 10. They're 44. They're a half game out of first place behind Western Kentucky. The DBU a game and a half. We talked about them earlier, but Western Kentucky guys still sitting at 90 in the RPI now. And I'm going to guess at this point there's no pathway for them finishing in the top 45.
Yeah.
Yep. Louisiana Tech made a 16-spot jump in the RPI this past week.
Yeah.
So up to 44.
Good for them. Okay. Horizon.
Wright State.
By the way, sorry, going back for 1 second. So we're still projecting DBU as the auto just because they're good.
Yeah. Or,
I mean, you could, I think that's what we had last week, right? DBU.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, La Tech.
You go La Tech.
You could, but I say stick with DBU, but La Tech's 1 game ahead in the standings and has the head-to-head. You could flip it. Heck, flip it.
Okay.
La Tech surging.
Got it. And then, are we sticking with Wright State?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you go Wright State for the Horizon and Columbia for the Ivy. Columbia, by the way, has already clinched the Ivy League regular season championship. They won that league by 4 games.
How about that?
On it. Yep. So who comes after the Ivy League in our conference by conference breakdown?
Oh, Mark, that's the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference.
and Kendall, what is that called?
The MAC.
That was less than inspiring.
Not that inspiring.
No, it was not. Try it again.
MAC.
That was much better, actually.
All right, love it.
Sort of sounded like an old cow I used to know.
An old cow used to do what?
I used to know.
Oh,
it's a G-rated podcast.
All right, so with the MAC.
Ryder and Niagara had that showdown series this past weekend. Our shotgun Spratling was there providing coverage. Of course he was. Intrepid man on the scene. The Purple Eagles of Niagara go down to Sonny Bottaro Field and take 2 out of 3 from the Bronx. Stick with Niagara. We never let our faith be shaken. We always believed in Niagara, and they have proven that they're the team to beat. Although they're tied with Fairfield for first. Fairfield is 13-2. Ryder now 12-3. So anybody's ball game in the conference tournament, but Niagara remains the team to beat.
They're the main streets of the MAC.
That's right.
So Bowling Green in the other MAC.
Yeah, they finally lost a series over the weekend to Kent State on the road, but still leading that conference by 5 games.
That'll play.
Yeah.
The Bowling Green Athletic Conference.
Remains a 1 bidder, as we recall. It's a 96 RPI for Bowling Green.
Yep.
Then the Missouri Valley, you've got Indiana State.
USC is now 68 in the RPI.
Kind of plummeting.
Yeah. Falling.
Yeah, you're not getting in at 68 out of the Mo Valley.
Failed to sweep Valpo this weekend. Valpo's 13-28. USC lost the finale there 20-0, which let me check my notes. It's not a great showing, guys.
Yeah. And Mountain West, still Fresno.
Yeah. Fresno State, by the way, randomly won this past weekend and won a series from Wazoo.
How about that?
Very strange. Okay.
Pat tried to include that series in our staff picks. I'm like, why? Why would you?
Yeah.
So just a very random series.
Right.
Hey, shout out Pat James, does a great job organizing our picks competition, by the way.
Yeah.
And picks winners every week.
Don't criticize your fellow Tar Heel.
Picks winners every week except for that one. That was a weird one. Come on, Pat.
And I don't know. So I think he's letting the Rune Dogs pick the games because
right,
Rune's is running away with this thing.
Etheridge Farms alleging conspiracy here.
Yeah, we are not happy. I mean, we're juggling our rotation. We're we're going to play some new players this week. I mean, it's put up or shut up time on the farm.
Man.
Hey, as we move to the NEC, can I just give just a hand clap to Maryland Eastern Shore? They're the last remaining winless team in college baseball.
That seems like a sarcastic clap, Kendall.
It was not. I'm very proud of their effort. Good job, good effort.
They're the one team you don't hate.
They are. I'm rooting for you, UMass.
Yeah, only 38. Yeah,
go to Sacred Heart here still, or
so Sacred Heart and Long Island, and Wagner and Merrimack and Central Connecticut all have winning streaks of 3 or more games at the moment, and those are the top 5 teams in the standings. So, rise up, NEC. It's all happening. Yeah, I mean, we got 3-way tie for first: Long Island, Sacred Heart, Wagner. Let's stick with the Pioneers. But there's teams playing. It seems to be playing well at the moment. Of course, they beat up on all the teams at the bottom of the standings last week, but so that'll happen.
The OVC.
Stick with the Rock, guys. Still in first place, Little Rock, 11-7. Still a team that we really like. I still think this team could be a dangerous 4 seed in a regional because they're veteran and they have guys.
Okay. Pac-12. We have Oregon State. And
Arizona,
then
Oregon State, Oregon.
Arizona would be in. Oregon would be in.
I think you have
co-lead
leading Utah with a 61 RPI.
I think Utah would be in.
Yeah, they would be.
But then nothing else. Cal, was
Cal. You can put on the bubble, but after that series loss to Stanford, they're down to 60 the RPI.
Okay.
Yeah.
And USC's still under 500, but they have a good conference record.
11-9. Yeah, but that's
Utah. By the way, we've made some of the comparisons of DSR being much higher. Utah actually very close to the RPI in the DSR. They're at 53 as opposed to 61 in the RPI.
Yeah, so still better in the DSR, but by 8 spots, which is not insignificant when you're on the bubble.
Right.
So yeah, Arizona, Oregon State, Oregon, Utah would be your safe teams. And then, it's funny, Utah 61 in the RPI, but I would certainly have them in the safe camp at the moment. And then, Cal, we thought, they were surging last week. They dropped, let's see, you said they were 60. That is a drop of 11 spots from last week. So that hurt them.
Okay.
But we can leave them on the list for now. Patriot League.
Army won that head-to-head over the weekend with Navy.
Against Navy, yep. So remains the team to beat, as they have been for about 5 years in a row now, at least. To the SEC.
Okay, so we have A&M, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina. They're all hosting.
Yep.
Then the next group, Georgia, Vandy, Mississippi State, Alabama.
Yep.
Would all be 2 seeds. And then you have Florida, who's trying to stay above 500. If they do, they'll get a bid. If they don't, well, there's always the road to Quahog.
That's right.
You have Ole Miss, who after the weekend kind of stick a fork in them.
Yeah. Adios. Update on 500 watch. The chase for 500, which I believe Rafe Rhymes pioneered some years back. Florida also chasing 500 like Rafe did back in the day. They have to win all their midweek games. They did do that last week against Stetson, 13-3. Now they've got FAU this week, and then they've got USF next week, and also 3 SEC series remaining. Hard wins, but 2 are at home versus Tennessee versus Kentucky. Again, those are top 8 projected seeds, but at least they're at home, and then they're at Georgia. So yeah, it remains the same. I mean, if they manage to finish above 500 overall, they will have the SEC record and the RPI to get in, as they did in 2018 or whenever it was.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they could have very easily swept that series in Fayetteville last weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost 2 one-run games, and there were some weird things going on. So
that was on the road too.
Yeah, on the road. Right. So And then there's LSU, who has just a sliver of a path left. I wrote something about that this morning.
Yep.
It ran Tuesday, but yeah, it's an uphill.
They got to win their final 3 series just to be at 13 wins going into Hoover.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's
don't like their chances.
Don't like their chances with A&M coming to town this weekend, and then they're at Alabama. Finish with Ole Miss. I mean, but they haven't been able to sweep the other series that they should have swept, right. Missouri and Auburn. So why are they going to sweep Ole Miss? I mean, maybe they do, but it might be a little too late by then.
Agreed.
To the SoCon boys.
Samford.
Yeah, remains the team in first place. Greensboro has won 6 in a row. They're surged up to second place, and they host Samford in a couple weeks. Obviously, it's a one bid league. We'll go to the conference tournament champ, and we'll stick with Samford. We like their club.
Yep.
Southland is no change here. Lamar cruising right along, 12-3 in the league, 2 games up on Nichols. Lamar, should they fail to win the automatic bid, if the season ended today, they'd be in. I think.
They'd have a really good shot.
45 in the RPI with a 34-8 overall record and a sweep on the road against Oklahoma. If you're curious about the needs report for Lamar to stay in the top 45, they can do it if they win 11 or 12 of their final 12. So they're going to fall. It's just a matter of how far they fall, whether they can stay. I mean, I think the way that they've dominated and they're just the overall record is so gaudy. I mean, if they're like
they have
53,
a marquee sweep.
Yeah, that's loud against the Big 12 leader. Right. If they're 53, 55 in the RPI, I think they got a chance based on those factors, which usually for a team in the Southland or any other comparable league, if you're outside the top 50, you're donezo, or even out of the top 40. A lot of times we've seen Sam Houston get snubbed in situations like that. Right. Wofford. Yeah, I mean, it happens a lot. But they've, again, that Oklahoma series, I think, is going to loom very large in the committee's minds.
It's proof of concept.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So after the Southland, we've got the SWAC.
Yeah, I got Florida A&M here. 17-4 now in the league. Turned in my Black College Nines ballot today. Had Florida A&M number 1. They won a series at Jackson State this past week.
Okay. And then, Aaron, your favorite non-MAC conference.
Abstain. I'm going to go for a walk, guys. I'll see you.
# reach the summit. # elite college baseball.
Yeah, good stuff. I would like to just strip this
Omaha.
away, but, I
Omaha.
think that's
I'm going with the Fighting Mavericks of Omaha.
Yeah, let's do it.
Make that change. I'm glad I didn't have to
participate. They won 2 from North Dakota State over the weekend, and then tied the final game at 8 innings in true Summit League fashion.
Which of the Dakota States did we have in last week? Was it South?
North. Actually, it was East.
We've it was top Dakota State.
Well, because we had flipped them a couple of times, the various Dakotas.
It was actually Minnesota State.
We had
Craig
bottom
T. Nelson
Dakota,
was
then
the
we had
coach.
top Dakota.
Hey, do you guys want your weekly Oral Roberts update?
They have a big series this weekend, man. They have the Mavs coming to town, they're at the Mavs.
They just swept a 2-game series with the third canceled on the road at South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits. So all of a sudden, Oral Roberts no longer one of the bottom 10 teams in the RPI. They're way up to number 284.
Next thing you know, they'll catch UCLA.
Yeah, the ship's passing in the night.
and just in case you haven't listened to previous shows, I'm only picking on Oral Roberts because it's just so
we're
absurd that they were in Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
Not just like for a series against the Mavericks on the road. Like they were in Omaha as in like the College World Series, and now they're 284 in the RPI. It's just like, it's mind-boggling anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't compute.
Why do you hate ORU?
I mean, that's, it's just wild. It's just wild is all. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Let's go to the West Coast Conference. Guys,
we got to do Sunbelt.
Oh, sorry.
Come on, man.
God, no respect.
Why do you hate the South so much?
Yeah, hate
Freaking
the South.
Yankee.
The worst. Yeah,
Coastal,
guys.
Do the Cajuns
Louisiana
as the automatic?
Yeah, Cajuns automatic. Coastal would be in. Troy would be in for me. That would be a change.
Yeah.
Troy, by the way, 7-3 in the last 10, swept Coastal over the weekend.
Right.
They're now clearly in second place. They're two games ahead of Southern Miss in second place, and then they're 31-14 overall with a 47 RPI.
Yeah, how about that?
I would have them in.
And they've got Louisiana at home this weekend.
Yeah.
I kind of like their chances the way Troy's playing right now, and we know about their talent. It's real talent. I'll be there for Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
I think I would take JMU off, or at least put them as a bubble team. They're now 11-10. Well, I mean,
there we are. It's still
They're
30
not
RPI.
Team, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're sim. I mean, if you look at their resume, I mean, what is much different than Coastal?
So yeah,
conference, 24 versus 30. They actually have 2 more wins against Q1 than Coastal.
how about that?
So
Yeah, they beat. I mean, remember JMU did win a game at Arkansas. They lost 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
They won a game at Arkansas. They beat Virginia Tech in a midweek game. They won 1 out of 3 rather at Coastal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would keep them certainly right here in this. I mean, like you said, they're not that different from Coastal, resume wise.
Yeah, let's keep them in.
Coastal's
and
famous.
Southern Miss on the bubble,
Yeah.
or are they solid in?
No, they're on the bubble still. I mean, 46 RPI. It's just a bubble RPI. And they've just been kind of, I don't know, guys. They're just kind of muddling along, right?
There.
They're just kind of hanging around, but not really doing much. Like they're beating the teams they should beat for the most part. They have the 1 series win against Troy back in March. Other than that, though, it's like, they won a series at La Tech too. Let's give them that. Well, let me backtrack a little bit here, Southern Miss. But
they got Indiana State and La Tech.
Yeah.
That's their 2 best series wins.
And winning a series against Indiana State, as we've learned, not an easy thing to do. So that actually is loud. And at La Tech and versus Troy, that actually gives them 3 quality series wins. I'm backtracking. I like Southern Miss. I mean, I already liked their team, but I was just kind of down on their resume because they've been meh lately. But got to remember
put them in.
Yeah, they're in.
Okay.
And even and going to Louisiana on the road and not getting swept.
Right.
I mean, that's a status.
And
quo.
those first 2 games were, I mean, they split them, but they could have easily won it. They led 2-0 in the 8th.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And they got Coastal at home this weekend. Big series.
Okay. So then you've got the West Coast Conference in San Diego.
Yeah, make that change. Didn't we have Gonzaga last week, or did we not?
And we ended it. We
had San Diego.
it, but we kept San Diego there.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So no change. San Diego is right now looking like a lock at large team. 14-4 in the league, 2 games up on the Zags now, 29 RPI, 8 in a row. They're in good shape.
Yep.
Yeah. And then potential bid stealing conference.
Yes.
Conference tournaments.
Yeah.
Would be the WAC, and it would be Grand Canyon, right?
Yeah, I'd stick with them. They played Cal Baptist this weekend. Showdown series in the WAC. It is in Phoenix at GCU. So anyway.
So we have 6 teams to cut.
Correct. We have
Georgia Tech, TCU, Kansas, St. John's, Purdue, Illinois, UNCW, Cal, Florida, and James Madison.
Yeah. I would start with TCU. I think they're
start with them being cut.
Cutting them. I think they're not ready yet.
Based on just you don't believe.
I mean, being
strong. I mean,
being the 11th place team in the Big 12, I guess, is where I come in there. But I mean, I don't know. Like they're the 9th or the 8th Big 12 team in for us right now. I don't know. It's just a weird team, weird resume, weird league. I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
At Baylor versus West Virginia, their last 2 series. I mean, I guess
There's
I do.
A chance to get wins.
Yeah, I do like their chances to win both of those. Just West Virginia is a good team, but it's at home. So let's say they go 4-2 in those 2 weekends to get to 14-16. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not ready to cut them yet.
I would definitely take one of the Big 10 teams off.
Yeah, let's cut Illinois. I think the fact that Purdue has Illinois at home late means a little something to me.
Okay.
in the race for the regular season title. And obviously, like winning the regular season title would be huge for either one of those teams. And that's not a sure thing with Nebraska and Indiana right there in the mix. But
right.
I know this seems harsh, but I think I would take UNCW out. I don't think the Coastal's getting 3 bids.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Well,
let's look at their resume.
Just for grins, let's see here. Let me look at something here. So conference RPI, the Coastal, by the way, is 12th nationally behind Missouri Valley, behind the SoCon, behind USA Conference USA American. The Big East, by the way, it's 6 overall, ahead of the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so for Wilmington, there are some nice wins here. Again, 2 out of 3 at Northeastern. Beat Wake Forest midweek, beat NC State midweek, beat Coastal Carolina midweek. They have a big one coming up tonight as we record this against NC State on the road. So, they've done some things. 5-7 Q1, tied for first with a top 50 RPI. And they've had to head over Northeastern. I mean, you can make a case that they're, more deserving than Northeastern.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not ready to cut them yet.
Yeah, I think I'd be more inclined to cut Cal.
I'm with you.
So let's go ahead and do that.
Well, we need to cut a Big 12 team for sure because they're not getting 9 teams in.
Yeah, right.
Do we have 9 or 8 on there right now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9.
Okay. Let's Mark, you made the case Kansas versus TCU earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I said I kind of liked Kansas's chances, but the fact is the RPI is not their friend compared to
And how do you think Kansas will finish, right? Because right now it's their conference record that's boosting them up.
Yeah.
If that gets negated based on how they finish, then what do they have?
I would predict them to lose 2 of their last 3 series, probably.
At K-State and at Texas feels like probably. So, yeah, okay. We can probably cut Kansas then.
Okay.
They were not in the field last week either, so that's not a deletion.
So we still have
3
teams. Based on what we looked at last week, I think Georgia Tech's going to be in.
Yeah.
Right. I think they would be a team I would want to keep. We looked at the way they finished. They're going to be around 500 in the league. Their RPI will improve based on the teams that they face.
Yep.
I just think that they're going to be.
I think so too. I think so too. Yeah, at Clemson versus Duke and at Florida State as a refresher. RPI will certainly improve. Let's take a quick gander at the needs report for them. 11 games left. If they win 7 of those 11, they can get into the top 32. Mm-hmm. If they win 5 out of those 11, they'll be in the top 45. So really like their chances, even though it's a tough road.
Yeah. And I'm still a believer in Florida. I don't know where those wins are going to come from, but I think that they're going to find a way.
Yeah, my faith is shaken in the Gators. But you're right. I mean, they were in the mix there in Fayetteville. They had a chance. They didn't, though. So 9-12 in the league, too, for what it's worth. Like, just, I guess if we think they're going to finish over 500 overall, then the conference record will be fine.
Yeah.
It would have to be. But so that's not a factor, the conference record. Yeah, Tennessee, Kentucky at Georgia.
It's tough.
Yeah. They're currently 1 game over 500, 22 and 21.
With 2 midweeks.
With 2 midweeks. So they got 11 games left. So they need to go 6-5. Which means, let's just do the math on this. So let's say they beat FAU and USF. That's 2.
Mm-hmm.
They need 4 more wins in those 3 weekends.
They've got to win one of those series at home.
Yeah.
And not get swept in the other.
Right.
Or at Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's not going to be easy.
No.
But they could. They're certainly. I'm with you. I mean, we know how talented they are.
I just think that they're going to, I mean, look at what the SEC has looked like at home all year. Okay. It's basically 2/3 of all of the wins have come by the home team. It's regardless of matchup. This includes Missouri's and Auburn's and everyone else. Okay. I think a motivated Florida team is going to get one of those home series.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Let's go back to the Big 12 because there's also UCF is an option here. Again, 32 RPI, 9-12 in the league. Them versus Kansas State is interesting because I think UCF has the head-to-head, right? God, this stuff works together, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 out of 3, but it was in Orlando, so kind of a push there, I would say. Slight edge K-State, UCF, but K-State's one game ahead in the standings. They're back-to-back in the RPI. I don't know. I would have K-State ahead of UCF still.
Mm-hmm. And UCF ahead of TCU.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So I guess it just comes back to TCU. I thought maybe I had something with UCF, but no, it just comes back to TCU.
So I think, we kind of talked ourselves into keeping Purdue as that second Big Ten team. So that only leaves one spot, guys.
Wait, so
yeah,
I see.
If you're
Got it.
counting Florida.
Right. Got to cut 3 of those last 4. Right. Exactly. Yep.
Right. So there's one left. You got to cut 3 between James Madison, Wilmington, St. John's, and TCU.
Yeah, I've got about St. John's. I think probably I think we cut them right now, even though I think they have a chance.
Even as a top 6 RPI league?
So the thing with St. John's,
there's 6 spots higher than a league that we're going to give 3 bids to.
Well, hold on. No, St. John's, the issue with them, though, is this. It's 57 in the RPI. It is, I mean, they win 9 out of 12 to get in the top 45, but they'll probably finish in the 50s. They have Creighton and Georgetown at home. Yeah. I mean, are they?
I mean, I kind of think that someone other than UConn is going to win that automatic, and this is kind of a placeholder pick.
Could be.
That's kind of the way
it could happen. Yeah. I mean, I guess percentages would say that those teams are all pretty good. Then UConn's a favorite.
I would keep St. John's, and we can trim somebody else off, but I would definitely trim off one of those other 2 CAA teams.
Okay.
I just don't think the 12th RPI league is getting 3 bids.
Right. Well, yeah, Wilmington or Northeastern.
So you want to look at Northeastern versus?
Yeah, let's do that. So again, we mentioned Wilmington won 2 out of 3 at Northeastern, but Northeastern is 31-11 with a 36 RPI. Wins at Georgia Tech. They won 1 out of 3 at Arizona, coming out of the cold winter, going to Tucson the first weekend. Won a series at ODU non-conference, who's fine, 67 RPI. Won a midweek game at UConn. Won ACC win against BC on the road, across town. So those are kind of the highlights of their resume. It's the highlights are a little light, really.
Yeah. Northeastern, by the way, magically had a Tuesday game against Stonehill with a 259 RPI canceled today.
Look at the weather.
Funny how that works.
Look at the weather up there just to make sure you're not casting stones against my Huskies unfairly. Yeah, I mean it's 57 degrees. It's too cold to play, Kendall.
No rain in the air, by the way. The nearest rain is west of Albany, New York.
There's no rain in the forecast. Well, not a great look there, but I mean, you just got to do. If
absolutely.
We see SEC and Big 12 teams
question.
do this all the time. Schloss has been unabashed about
A&M
it.
did it last year.
Yeah. Which is why we need the DSR.
Yeah.
case you're curious, DSR does not like Northeastern. They're 50 in the DSR, 35 in RPI. So
what about the Seahawks?
Yeah, Seahawks in DSR.
Yeah.
46, so about the same. They're 48 in RPI.
I would lean towards a team that beat Northeastern on its home field.
Yeah. Wilmington, 12 games left. News report says they need to win 9 to get in the top 45, and they're 48 right now, which means they're going to fall. You would think.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this it's just guesswork because we're having to project, right? What teams are going to do. There's no way to know this. I'm kind of lost here.
I know.
Once we get a little closer to the finish line, you can actually look at the resumes and you can make some determinations. This is just kind of we're going to talk in circles.
Well, in Northeastern, though, worth noting again, these reports. This is a guideline. Only needs to win 5 or 6 of their last 12 to stay in the top 45. So RPI really working in Northeastern's favor compared to Wilmington. And if we think that's ultimately only one game back in the standings, so maybe that's the pick. And I hate cutting Wilmington because I think they're quite good and they've had a great year, but I think maybe that's the play right now.
So St. John's and Northeastern would be the last 2 teams.
So
no, we still have 2 teams left.
Yeah,
we still have to cut 2 more.
Right.
So it would be Northeastern and St. John's. And you would cut TCU, Wilmington, and James Madison.
Oh, okay. So you're cutting TCU.
Or, I mean, it's them or St. John's.
Yeah.
If you're keeping Northeastern.
Right. And I think we do need to have a second CAA team because you got 2 with good cases. I feel like one of them is going to wind up with a bid.
Yeah.
So does it come down to TCU or Northeastern for TCU or St. John's rather for the last spot?
Yeah. And I kind of like the idea of the whole Big East getting a second.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best year that the Big East has had in maybe ever, honestly.
Right.
Well, in this configuration, of the Big East.
Yeah, I mean, the Big East is like, I mean, get this, the Big East is like just a very couple of percentage points behind the Sun Belt and the conference RPIs right now. It's impressive.
Yeah, that is impressive. Good call. All right. You've sold me on St. John's.
Last 4. We're going to agree on these. St. John's, Northeastern. How do we feel? Maybe Florida. And
I'm looking at something wrong. I have 66 teams on here.
Oh, I haven't. Hold on. Let me remove TCU and.
Oh, okay.
Who's the other team we just cut?
James Madison.
Oh, did we? Okay, got it.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Were they were in last week, right? Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. The one takeaway I kind of have, I know we kind of get to that at the very end, but the one takeaway I have is this field kind of gives you an idea how quick things can change. Remember 2 weeks ago, the bubble, there was no bubble discussion. Now, I mean, the bubble is pretty large, so it can change in a mere couple of weeks.
Absolutely. So what I've got for the last 4 is St. John's, Northeastern, Florida, and Purdue. And the next 4 are TCU, Wilmington, James Madison, and Kansas.
Yeah, that feels right to me.
Yep.
Here are your at-large changes from last week's field. Illinois, Cal, and JMU fall out. St. John's, Troy, and Purdue come in. We also have 4 automatic bid changes. Austin P replaces Kennesaw. College of Charleston replaces Wilmington, who slips out of the field, just missing an at-large bid. And you know what? Like if we were to record this podcast tomorrow and Wilmington goes to NC State and wins tonight, then maybe that would have changed things. But La Tech replaces DBU, but DBU stays in the field as an at-large team. And La Tech was already an at-large team last week, so there's no change in the number of bids there in Conference USA. And then Omaha replaces North Dakota State in the Summit League. So there you have it.
Good stuff, guys.
Perfect.
This is any final thoughts before we adjourn?
Nope, just a bubble discussion, and also even though the top 8 looks a little bit more certain, still a lot of jockeying for position in those 9 through 16 seeds. I feel like, especially like Wake Forest, for instance, like how do they finish the regular season? Because right now they're trending downward, but they're obviously supremely talented. So, do they end up in the top 16, or do they struggle down the stretch and get bumped out?
Yeah, I'm just really fascinated by those at-large races in those mid-major conferences that don't historically get benefits of the doubt. Like Kendall talked about it, is the CAA really going to get 3 bids? You're probably right, Kendall. As much as I like those top 3
teams. I mean,
I
in a perfect world, I think all 3 of those teams are postseason worthy. I just like conventional wisdom, when you look at the committee, suggests that the number 12 RPI league is not getting 3 teams in.
Right.
Yeah. And then you've got, the Big East, as we've talked about. Obviously the Sun Belt has all those teams. So there's some interesting ones that, I'd be curious to see if those teams, when push comes to shove and we get another month in the books here, do those bids just get gobbled up by the power leagues, or can we really get multiple bids for this?
Well, I would add this too. If you're a mid major, you're really rooting against Florida right now.
Yeah,
because if Florida has no pathway to being over 500, they can't make it no matter what. So
exactly. And they could always make a run in Hoover too, but I mean it's tricky because you gotta come through the play-in game and then you get to double elimination, and so even if you win the play-in game, you could lose the next 2, right? Is that how the format works these days? I can't keep track of it. Okay.
Until Saturday, and then it goes back to singles again.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing, win 2 games and lose 2 straight, and you're back to where you were.
Right. The only thing I would add that I didn't hear you guys cover is just how volatile the Big 12 race is going to be with all these at-large bubble candidates. I mean, teams that we have safely in, they're really not that safe, and they could slide out of it as well. And some of these teams that are out, when we come back next week, they could be solidly in. I mean, that's how close that race is. So it'll be a lot of fun to follow.
Yeah.
But until next week, that's our show. Here's our field of 64. Yell at us. Tell us what we did right. Tell us what we did wrong, and we'll do it again next week.